Great to see you all. Stephen, great to have you here. First time to Google?
First time to Google, yeah. I was going to wear my pink jersey, but I washed it too much and put it in the dryer.
Yours was much harder earned than mine was.
And I put mine in the dryer, it doesn't fit anymore, you know.
Well, actually, we'll talk about that because it's 30 years this month since you got out on the start line for the Giro for a fantastic season. Do you remember how you were feeling when you lined up, and were you confident of what was coming?
Well, in fact, lining up I was a co-leader with my teammate Roberto Visentini, who actually won the Giro in '86, and I'd helped him to win it. But I'd won the Tour of Romandie going into the Giro, and I'd won the Tour of Valencia, second in Paris-Nice, second whatever, and I felt that I deserved at least a level par kind of title of leader, co-leader, and whoever is lucky enough on the day, he can be leader. And that's the way it was for the first few days. I got the pink jersey after day 3, held the jersey for a week, and I quickly noticed that my teammate was following me rather than following the others. So which just suited me because at least he was never far away from me. But at the same time, if he had been, I won't say intelligent enough, but if he had been more doing his own game, he would have been trying to get away and leave me behind. So it suited me, he was actually never too far from me. But I was only after the first week then with a big time trial, and I flopped. And my biggest memory of that day was I had the jersey for 8 days. I was being claimed as a hero and everything else, and I quite enjoyed it and lapped it all up. And this day after this time trial, I came to the finish. I lost 2 minutes on Visentini. He got the jersey. I arrived in and nobody gave me a towel. Nobody said, "Stephen, poor Stephen, what happened?" Nobody was trying to console me. And I was looking across to Visentini, and he was getting all the adulation, all the press and media were all over him. And I just heard one remark when I was going past. The journalist said to him, "Well, Roberto, it's quite clear now you've won the time trial that you're now the only sole leader of the Carrera team. So Roche now will ride for you, but then you can pay back then when you go to the Tour in July." And Roberto politely turned to the journalist and said, "Yeah, it's true, Stephen will ride for me now. I'm the sole leader. I've showed everybody who's the strongest in the team, but I'm not going to the Tour, I'm going on holidays."
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, he's being, honest about it anyway. But at the same time, I'm going to ride for the guy, and he said it quite kind of openly that there's no payback. So it wasn't very fair.
Now, he was an Italian in an Italian team, in an Italian race, obviously in Italy. How did the
previous winner?
And the previous winner. How did the next few weeks transpire for you in terms of winning over the Italians, winning over the team, and winning the race?
Well, actually, I'm still working on it because you can imagine, I just said, kind of taking the pink leader's jersey off, an Italian riding for an Italian team, previous Giro winner, a great Italian hope. It was quite devastating for him, and the public made me feel that they were devastated for him also. And but the very next day after the time trial, we had to have a talk with myself. Had to kind of Google help, and what can I do next, And we decided that myself, my teammate Eddie Shippers, my teammate and roommate, the only guy that was really with me, said, well, what do we do? He's annihilated everybody today, so he's obviously gone very deep, gone into the pain zone, and normally he will not have recovered for the next day. So if we let him recover the next day, well, the following day was a mountain stage, so we won't be able to kind of catch him out at all. So at the next day was a kind of transition stage, a bit of a kind of Mickey Mouse stage. We thought, well, if something stupid could happen, it has to happen today. So we set out with no real ambition to upset the apple tart, but if we saw an opportunity, why not? So a breakaway got away, we had no Carrera teammates in there, so I thought, well, it's not my place to be there because I was kind of a co-leader, but at the same time, if I got into the break, it would save my team from chasing the breakaway down. But then there's nobody dangerous in the group, so I've no real reason to be there either. So I was fighting with myself. So I decided, okay, well, I can't attack because I seem to be attacking. So what if I just go over the top of the hill and just don't look behind me and see what happens at the bottom of the hill. So I went down the hill quite fast and got to the bottom of the hill. I had nearly a minute and a half up on the main group, and I caught the front group. So I didn't attack though. I went down the hill faster than him. People keep saying, even 30 years on, Stefano, you shouldn't have attacked your teammate. But I just want to make it clear, I didn't attack. I went faster than him on the downhill. It's clear, yeah? So then all of a sudden the team car came along and said, Stefano, what are you doing? I said, well, I went down the hill quite fast, very surprised nobody followed me. Now I'm in the break. At least my team now are at ease. They can sit behind and wait for the Bianchis and the Panasonics to ride. And the guy says, Stefano, you don't understand. There's mayhem behind you. They're on the ground, they're hanging out of trees, they're everywhere. The ones and twos, you went down that hill so fast, they're everywhere. It's totally disorganized behind you. You're going to get away. Well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? No, Stefano, you don't understand. Roberto's riding behind you. I said, oh, that's not very good of a teammate. I tell Roberto to stop, and I'll stop. No, Stefano, you don't understand. Roberto wants you to stop. I said, no. Tell him he stops, I stop. He rides, I ride harder. And there was kind of war was declared. And I told him, just tell Roberto not to give it his all, because when he catches me, I'm going again. So that's what actually happened. And he caught me on the final climb. And I struggled like terrible on the final climb, and because I'd done like 45k riding in the front. And my teammate Eddie Shippers was beside me, and he came along beside me and said, Stephen, this is the day you win the Giro. You got to catch that breakaway now, because there's a group of 4 or 5 guys ahead with Tony Rominger, Steve Bauer. You got to catch that, guys. This is the day you win the Giro. And I buried myself over the top, and I finished like 4 or 5 seconds behind the group on the finish line, but just 1 second ahead of Tony Rominger to put on the pink jersey, which doesn't sound a lot, but I could have imagined another scenario after everything that had happened, taking the jersey off an Italian rider in an Italian race, in an Italian team. They wouldn't have been very kind of sympathetic with me at the finish. My boss had come along to sign me a new contract for the following year. So all of a sudden the boss got his helicopter and went home and left me to deal with a very annoyed public. And he couldn't send me home because I had a jersey and Roberto lost 4 or 5 minutes. So the scenario there was, for 1 second, the whole history could have been changed. And of course we had no earplugs those days either, so we didn't know what was happening. So but after that then things got quite complicated.
And was that the day you knew you were going to win the Giro?
That was the day I realised how hostile the Italian public can be. Because even today, for example, you know, even though we all feel cocky and everything else, and somebody would say to you, Stephen, here's a scenario. What would you do in this scenario? And if someone was to describe that scenario to me today, after not living that scenario, I said, there's no way I'd have stayed there. I'd gone home on the first plane home. I'd have been home, because it was an incredible scenario. And the very next day, the people were spitting at me, shouting all kinds of abuse at me, spitting rice mixed with wine at me, all kinds of slogans, which can't mention here because too many young people here. It's absolutely, it was amazing. And for the first day, I wasn't allowed to talk to the press, so I couldn't get my side of the story across. But the next morning, I spoke to a journalist. I told him to be my spokesperson. And he took my story and very politely said to me, once it was all finished, Stephen, you know, the story's great, you know. The only thing is, all the articles are done for tomorrow. So survive tomorrow. I can promise you, your article will be in the paper the following day. I'll tell your side. So made things very, very complicated for me. And the very next day, then on the podium getting my flowers, and there was it wasn't as luxurious as it is today. It was like a big back of a big truck. There was the podium. There was a plastic plexi kind of curtain. Behind that curtain, there was the live television. So I was kind of saying to myself, like, I can't live this kind of. I'm going to get killed here. Someone's going to kill me. It was really, really hostile. I had to tell my side of the story. So I threw my flowers around a bit, and I walked over gently towards the two guys on the front door of these plastic doors for the live television. Threw my flowers out to the public, and at the same time barged in between these two big guys that were standing there to protect the live set. And I burst into the live set. The journalist says, we have a surprise guest. Stephen, I suppose you've come in to surprises. I'm sure you've come in to tell your side of the story of Sapada, they call it. So I said yes. So at that particular day, I realised for the first time I could actually speak Italian, and I put a few words together to explain my side of the story. But it helped a little bit, but you can imagine in Italy, didn't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So things were extremely difficult and hostile for the next 10 days.
Is there any Italians in the room? Oh, look, they're all watching live TV. Well, it all worked out very well. You ended up being the first Irish person to win the Giro. And we'll talk about the rest of the season later on as well. But I wanted to go back to the very beginning, because you're a local boy, born and bred out the road in Dundrum. What got you interested in cycling in the first place?
It was quite by accident, really. I played football with the local lads after school. I thought it was good, but I always watched them playing on the Sunday, even though I trained with them all week, but which wasn't very nice, you know. And I swam fairly strong, but I wasn't really a straight swimmer. I swam off to the side, which is very embarrassing when you're in a pool. And one day I was playing football in the middle of our housing estate, and maybe not so much these days, but in those days there was always one person at least in the housing estate that knew everybody's business. And this particular person, her husband actually cycled. And so she knew I used to ride on my bike, get a paper round. I used to deliver the papers on my bike, and I'd go up to Glencree on a Sunday with a little primus stove and make my bangers and my sausages and think I was great, you know. Think I'd gone to the end of the world. And I'm back. But this woman knew that I had a little interest in cycling, and she was coming down from the shops one day, and she crossed by the green where we played football, and she said, "Stephen, you like riding a bike, don't you?" I didn't ask her. I was too polite to ask her how she knew. But looking back on it, now we know why. But anyway, she said, there's a new cycling club starting up at H. Williams at 7:30 next Wednesday. If you want to go along, go along. So I went along, and I was told I had to be 13 to join. I was only 12 and a half. So I told them I was 13. And I joined the club and went on from there. But I didn't actually jump at it straight away. I enjoyed it because I was training with my mates all week, or whenever I had time. And the weekend I went out and rode a race with my mates. And the first race I rode was in Skerries. And after a couple of laps, I stopped. I was riding my friend's bike because my bike wasn't good enough. I was wearing jeans and a pair of shoes, and the jeans were rolled up. And it was on a small closed circuit in Skerries. But 2-3 laps to go, I pulled into the side of the road, and the coach came running after me. Stephen, what's wrong? What's wrong? I was, nothing. Why'd you stop? I was tired. So I stopped. But the beauty of it was, I was cycling and competing with the mates that I was training with all week. Mm-hmm. And then there was a race every other week, and we got on better and better from strength to strength. But I was never really a super rider, but I enjoyed what I was doing. And that's probably what maybe stick in it. Mm-hmm.
So clearly you've learned a lot about cycling and training for cycling over the years. Here's a question for you, because there's lots of avid cyclers here. Let's say you pick somebody from the audience here, and you've got 8 weeks to get them ready for the Tour de France. What are you going to focus on?
It's going to be a very, very big task. I'd focus on maybe getting time off work first of all. and I'm trying to find a good training program. But no, it's I'm training myself for the moment for our own event. We're doing we're having our own kind of a tour back to '87. We're going to do the '87 21st stage of the tour. It's over 3 days, and I'm starting to train for it now myself. But it's a big task for me because I've been training a lot. But looking at the people here today, I don't see much talent here for cycling. But
all the Italians are missing.
I could be making a mistake, maybe, you know. But at least watch the Giro next few weeks. Might get a few tips.
Well, I mean, training has changed a lot since 1987 to today, and obviously you're a keen observer of how the cyclists prepare themselves today. In fact, I hear you're commentating on the Giro starting tomorrow for French TV. What's your observations on how training has changed over the last 30 years? And particularly, what things would you do differently based on what you know now if you were going back to do 1987 again?
I'd ask my parents to be born 10 years later. Because when you see the money that's going around now, you say, well, you know, I wonder have I got a case there, a legal case, you know. But no, it's everything has changed, totally changed, and it's difficult to. I would never look at it and say our time was better than today, or today is not as good as yesterday. We all deal with it our own times, and when you look at Nicholas, for example, today, who's racing with BMC, and you see his lifestyle, you look at his bank account and you say, yeah, it's brilliant. But at the same time, look at the lifestyle, you say, well, it's not money for nothing, you know. It's
how is the lifestyle different?
Well,
so Nicholas is your son.
Nicholas is my son, yeah. Well, for example, I'd have ridden, say, 38,000 kilometers a year. I've been racing 120 days a year. Against today, 65 days a year, maybe. Chris Froome might do 50 days a year. So it's a lot of less competition. And that's why maybe today some of the riders go on till 38, 40, whereas in our day was 31, 32, 33, because we're riding twice as much. But we started racing in February and finished off in October. And we're hitting peaks like in March for Paris-Nice, in May for the Romandy or Giro, in July for the Tour, in August for the end of season classics, in September for the World Championships, and then for Lombardy in October. Then we'd have a break. Well, I used to always say, being stubborn, we'd say, well, you know, you don't get paid for staying at home, so you got to race. You know, you don't get paid for training, you got to race. You win a race, you get paid. Training, there's no money, got to train, then race. Whereas today it's, I focus on a race, I train for that race, and I try and win that race. And it might mean taking 5 weeks out in the middle of the season. Whereas for us, that was totally unheard of. We do a 3-week training block in February, and that was it for the year. And we're afraid of taking time out because you're afraid of losing the condition, because you all the time ask yourself the question, will it come back? I left off at here, when I get back on, will it be the same? You're always worried about it. Whereas today, with all the data available to the guys, the power meters, the watt meters, the heart monitors, and all the science there is behind it, they can tell you exactly where they are. They haven't got to go out on the bike and say, I'm going to go well today. They know nearly from the numbers how they are and where they are. It's all gone so scientific. But at the same time, the downside is, I'm asking myself, well, do they enjoy it as much? We really enjoyed it. Whereas when you're riding a bike today, you're looking at the watts, and you're wondering why they aren't going up. Or you're getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to do 6 hours, that's 3,000 calories. Well, I've only eaten 1,500, so I'm going to lose so many grams. It's all full-time, 24/7, all the time on the ball. Whereas we'd get up in the morning at 7, half 7, have a good breakfast, go out and ride a bike. Didn't really matter what we had in our pockets, we'd ride a bike. Hail, rain or snow, we'd ride a bike. Today the guys are getting up, they're nearly weighing their food, what the proteins, the calories, and this, and the carbs. They're weighing, everything is all monitored, in function to what training they're doing. Where we train in groups, now they all train as individuals, because they all have a different training program. And everyone's watts are different. So it's become unsociable as well. So I don't know if I was definitely if I was thrown into this peloton today, I wouldn't cope. But the guys today have grown up with this, the numbers. And it's all about numbers. And which is, I think for the kids, it's a bit unfortunate because they don't know how to enjoy the bike. For example, I have another son, Alexei, who's 18, and he went for a trial for the AG2R cycling club there about a few weeks ago. And 19 or 20 guys went for the same interview, and I spoke to the coach afterwards. And the coach said, Stephen, there was 2 guys of 20 that appealed to me. One was your son. I said, why? Because he spoke to me about himself, what he was doing, his plans, what he was doing in school, what job he was looking for. Whereas the other guys were talking about how many watts they're doing, what their recovery rate is, how many heartbeats they have, and everything else, what they've done in their VO2 max test and everything else. Whereas Alexi has never done one. Because I always said, Alexi, there's time for that later on. Learn the feeling of your legs, learn the feeling of your body when you're under pressure, and then start working on the watts. But working on the watts when you're young, 16, 17, 18 years of age, that's where you learn to enjoy the bike, which means when you're 21, 22, 23, you start needing to get into the watts and nitty-gritties of the real kind of scientific training. If you've been doing it all your young age and haven't ever enjoyed it, when the times get tough, I think that's where it all comes out. You kind of go to playing football or playing golf or marbles or something, but it's difficult to stay in cycling when you have to do it for a lifetime. That's why I think the riders today, the lifestyle is very hard because it's full on. It's 24/7, and it's a very difficult lifestyle to have.
Mm-hmm. Now, Stephen, you mentioned reaching a number of peaks in a season when you were back in '87. Obviously, winning the Giro was a peak, and then a couple of weeks later, I think 3 weeks later, you were lining up for the Tour de France. And feeling confident going into that race?
Well, I just won the Giro, and under very difficult circumstances. So of course I was worried about my condition, general condition. But I decided that between the Giro and the Tour there's only like 18 days, I think it was. So, and I suffered an awful lot morally and physically, but not very, very severely morally. So I thought, well, that year's tour was 26 days. It's the longest one since the war, and the most mountainous since the war. So I wasn't a great climber, I was a good climber. So going into a tour which was very mountainous was going to be difficult for me. So I decided, okay, well, I'll hide for the 3 weeks between the Giro and Tour. Because going to races, everyone's going to be talking about Visentini, how I got it, how I didn't get it, how I lost it, why did I attack him and why didn't I attack him. So I thought, I don't want to answer it again. So let's just kind of get on with it and prepare for the Tour. So the first week I just rode the bike, just promenade and just riding the bike when I felt like it. And the second week I started building up the distance, and the third week I started training behind the motorbike, doing like once in the morning, once in the evening time, doing short spins, but not too tiring, but fast spins. Because my idea was that after winning the Giro, going to the Tour, if you don't kind of show the first day, people say, oh well, it was a fluke, or it doesn't matter. Whereas I want to kind of show everybody that the Giro wasn't a fluke, and the Tour, I also have it marked as one of my priorities. So I finished third in the prologue, which was good for me because I was showing everybody that I was still in form. And that particular tour I kind of broken up into the kind of 7 or 8 days because you cannot be in form for 26 days. So you pick out the days that suit you, which is the prologue, show everybody you're here, stay safe to the first time trial, do your best the next time trial, and I won that. Then you go on into the first mountain stage and you try and perform on it. So that was my strategy up to the Alps, and then the Alps I kind of say, okay, I can identify now who my rivals are and how can I beat them. And a lot of it was strategy, which is, a lot of it today is not as strategic, it's more scientific. But in our day there was a lot of kind of strategy, and you always had to kind of work on the other guy and know what his strong points, his weak points, and try and work on them.
And your favourite moment from that tour?
The favourite moment on the tour was probably a dramatic moment for everybody, and especially my family, because when I collapsed at the finish line on La Plania. But it's an event that everybody talks about today, still, because of the like I was 1 minute 20 down with 5k to go, and I pulled out all the stops and brought it back down to 4 seconds on the finish line. But I'd brought back the gap down so in a short period. It was kind of purposely done. I gave it everything I had because I knew that if I reacted earlier, the Gaudo might accelerate. Whereas by him having 120 up with 5k to go, he's going to say, okay, well, I'm happy now. I've got Roche now. I'm okay in the lead. I have 120 ahead, so I've won the tour. And I was thinking, well, I'll let him think that, and then with 4k to go, 5k to go, give it everything I have, and then and try and get back to within 30 seconds of him, and then surprise him. So that's what I did, but I came right back to 4 seconds. So the problem was that the journalists were all saying, well, Laurent Fignon won the stage, so they were all over Laurent Fignon. They were on Delgado winning the Tour, and they were on the peloton. But Roche was in the middle, but he'd lost the Tour and no sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
So when Roche came out of nowhere, all of a sudden the journalists had their articles already pre-written as to Delgado won the Tour, and how Roche went into Anonymous, and then Roche came down the corner. So the journalists were running towards Delgado, and all of a sudden they come over to me. So nobody wanted to help me off my bike, because they were all looking for the first word, where I couldn't talk. So I collapsed on that on the finish line. And the one thing I remember the most frightening thing was that I'm lying on the ground, and I can't move any of my arms, my legs, can't move them. And the guys are saying, Stephen, move your legs in. The ambulance, the car's getting close to you. And I couldn't move my legs. And the doctor is saying, Stephen, blink your eyes if you can hear me. But so I communicated with the doctor for 5 minutes with my eyes, just yes, no, until I started coming around. Then they put me in the back of the ambulance, and then things got a bit better. But it was a frightening moment, but for me it was a moment, and historic moment really, because that's the day I could have lost the Tour.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an epic day. I had attacked over the Galibier like 100k to go. It was suicidal, but I did it. And I was caught. My plan backfired, but I still came back to save the day on that planning stage. So for me, that's probably the most memorable day of the Tour. Maybe because everyone talks about it even today, and it's still so fresh in my mind. But it is a famous day in cycling, and a famous commentary from Phil Liggett, because Phil Liggett was the only one really watching the monitor that day. And when he saw me coming, he said, "Look, that looks like Roche. That is Roche." And his words are very famous even to this day for the live commentary.
Yeah, I remember that Tour very well. I was there on the Champs-Élysées that day I was very young.
Wearing glasses there,
and it was at a time when we didn't have very many Irish sporting heroes. In fact, I think of you as a pioneer in that. It wasn't until 1988 that the Irish football team qualified for their first big event, and since then we've been spoiled. But you were a real pioneer. Was there a moment after that where you went, wow, I really made the big time?
Big time, no. But I didn't really realise the impact it was having back here in the country, because like the late Charles Hoy on Taoiseach met me on the podium in Paris, and
never missed a photo op.
Never missed a photo opportunity. And I didn't really know. I knew he was okay, but I wasn't intimate with him, so I was kind of say, well, what's he doing here? Should I say hello to him? Should I ask him go for a pint, or what should I say to him? Anyway, he already had a few pints. But when he was finished, the protocol and everything else, he leaned in my shoulder and said, "Every day on Malahide, couldn't have a cup of coffee." And he was totally stoned. But I took him to his word. And before I went to that one, I came home the following day to Dublin, and Charles Hoy was waiting for me there at the foot of the plane with a fabulous welcoming. And I'm coming home on the plane, well, I'm going like an idiot here, back in Dublin, getting off a plane, and nobody in the airport, because the 525 cycling fans are all in Paris. They can't get home to meet me, so I'm going to look bloody stupid getting off a plane for a reception and have nobody there. So anyway, to my surprise, I got off the plane, and there was thousands of people all over the tarmac. They had banners up all over the airport, and when I got off the plane, then the crowds jumped the barriers, ran onto the tarmac, and the police had to make a human hay so I could walk through. Like real Elvis Presley, Beatles stuff. It was amazing. People were pulling at me, and absolutely amazing. And at a civic reception, the bus ride then from the airport to Dublin, civic reception in the Mansion House, from there out to my house. So that was an amazing day for me, because there was so many people that day in Dublin, and had come to greet me, my homecoming. And I realised then that the impact that people were watching television at home, they were watching the papers, they were not so much on social media, because it wasn't so much at the time, but they were following what was going on, and really appreciated what I did. But getting back to the Charles Hoy thing, like people say he stole the show, but in all fairness, like I had a story to tell. I actually went down to his house a couple of months later, because we had an event in Malahide, and I called in, And I said, they stopped me at the box, and I introduced myself. They told me to go up to the door, and the door was opened. And the late Charles Hoy came out of a meeting with his all Aran sweater on him, a pair of Aran slippers. Hey, Stephen, I'm in a meeting here. Go to the bar at the back, and I'll meet you in 5 minutes. So he came in the back room anyway, and there was no journalist, nobody around, just himself, myself. And we kind of relived the world and everything else for about 2 hours. At the end of it all, he went into a back room with a velvet curtain, and he came back out with a box of chocolates and brushed the dust off and says, "Give it to the wife." So I held him to his word, gave chocolates to the wife, of course. But I mean, on the podium in Paris, he got a lot of stick for coming over and greeting me. But he said to me, "Stephen," everyone turned, he was a bit on it. So I called in, and he welcomed me, and we spoke about everything and anything for 2 hours with no journalists, nobody else around. So, I mean, for me, it was a great moment for me to be sitting with a person like that and to be just talking to a normal person.
Mm-hmm. So the first Irish winner of the Tour de France, the only Irish winner of the Tour de France so far. Who's your bet for the next Irish winner of the Tour de France?
I wouldn't mind keeping it in the family.
Well, you have plenty of options.
Well, Nicholas now is getting a bit long in the tooth, but Alexei coming up, he's very, very good. Well, he's got incredible potential. I don't want to put any pressure on the kid now, but he's got great potential. But his passion is IT, and he's doing very well at it, so he has an option. But he loves the cycling as well, and he's got great talent, so we'll see where it goes. But I don't know where or who the next Irish person will be, or if he's even born yet. But I did a charity event down the Leinster Loop, down in Naas, down in Kildare last year. We have a family ride on the Saturday. I was riding along with a young kid about 11, 12 years of age, and he was riding all the cycling gear. I said to him, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" He says, "I want to be the next Irish winner of the Tour de France." So maybe it was him.
Good.
Maybe it's him.
Good. Okay. Let's go into the darker side of the sport, because obviously there's been a lot of talk over the last while about drugs in sport, and particularly in cycling. In fact, actually, I looked that the last Tour de France that you rode in, you were riding with a certain Texan who was doing his first Tour de France, and very infamously ran into lots of trouble after that. What's your thoughts on drugs in the sport? Well,
it's whether drugs, whether it be, I always ask the people like today, where does cheating begin and end? You know, they have this thing now, they call it sticky bottle. Whereas any of you involved in cycling know what a sticky bottle is. It's actually when you see the rider wants a bottle, so he puts his hand out, the car comes up, and all of a sudden the rider goes fast forward, and he's pushing himself off the car. And like I say, like for example, that's where cheating begins also there, without getting into the doping side of it. Cheating starts there. And getting back on to a group after having a wee or a puncture, being sucked back in by the car, right up the back of the bunch. I said, don't wait till somebody gets in the car, gets back up, gets out of the car before doing something about it. But unfortunately, the UCI don't listen to me anymore. And last year we saw Nibali doing the similar thing. He got dropped. He had a problem, and the first group was going away from him, and he got a sticky bottle. And we saw from the helicopter his speed went from 40 to 70 km an hour for about a kilometre or so. He caught the group in front. And in the end, he even tried defending himself as to why is everybody getting onto me? You know, why didn't have an accident, or an incident? Whereas for me, all those things are all incidents of the race. That's what makes up the race. You know, you can't be doing it. But on the darker side of it, on the drug side of it, like I was always against it. And I must say that the last two generations have had it very hard, because we've been telling all the kids to stay clean and don't cheat, but they've been riding against riders who they know are more than likely cheating. And I used to say, like back in the 80s, that you could say 10% of the peloton might be cheating, and the others are suspected of cheating. Whereas in the 90s and 2000, we were saying, well, 90% of the peloton are cheating, and then 10% might be cheating. And that all kind of came out in all the different books that were written over the last couple of years, that it was true. But the last two generations...
Where do you think it is now?
I reckon it's gone back to where it was I really hope that there'll be even less than 10% still doing it. It can never be proven. But with the biological passport now and the whereabouts system, it's getting more and more complicated for guys to cheat without being caught. But as you know yourself, there's always something new on the market that we don't know about. And we always feel that there's always somebody a little bit further ahead. But I'm confident that the UCI are doing the utmost to make it clean. But it's all about education. Like, why did it get so bad? It got so bad because the young kids were going out with daddy and mommy the weekends and riding the race. They were coming in crying because they got sore legs, which is normal. And daddy would go to the local GP and say, listen, my young fella has sore legs on Sunday in the race, can you give me something? He's giving him whatever, an aspirin or whatever, vitamin C. And then the following is something else, then it's something else. Then it gets into the high-end drugs. Then that young kid gets a pro contract. He knows all his life, he's been using whatever, so he has to use it to perform. So he continues on with it. And that's where the cycling got to over the years, because the kids were starting off young, but there was no control on it. The GPs were giving out anything and everything, whereas it took like 2 generations to pull it back a bit. And of course, all the different books that were written about it highlighted all the problems and made everyone aware of what is and what was going on. And then, of course, all the controls that are being put in place, the whereabouts system, the biological passport is amazing. Like a normal cyclist now will do a minimum 14 controls in the year without even being randomly tested. He has to also tell everybody, they got an app where they have to kind of put in there their program. They call it the whereabouts program. So if, for example, Nicholas is coming to me on a Saturday, he has to put in this app, I'm going to my dad in 1006 Man St. Claude in Antibes. If the last minute he changes his mind to go to his grandmother or whatever, he has to put it in there. Because this base serves for the Olympic Council, the national federations, the UCI. They can look at this and say, okay, this guy is, I'm going to go and test him. Where is he? We'll go and test him. And the rider has to be within 2 hours of where he said he will be. If he's not, he gets a first warning, then he gets a second warning, and a third warning, he's positive, declared positive and suspended. So nobody wants to have that on the record. So it is getting very, very hard for riders or athletes that are trying to cheat. But unfortunately, there's always somebody head of the posse. But I see in the racing today, the young riders that were new to the sport have understood that you don't kind of win by cheating. It's about hard work, dedication, and training.
And talking about today and hard work and dedication and training, I mean, the leading, the favourite going into the Tour de France this year is Chris Froome. How would you have fared against him?
What a question.
How would you have beaten him? Would you have ridden for Team Sky?
Yeah, I think that my Carrera team back in the 80s was the equivalent or similar to a Team Sky, except we were more tactically, we could do really our own tactics. We spoke with tactics together and we implied what we felt was necessary. Whereas the Sky team are told what to do, and sometimes you can call the guys like brain dead. Like an example, like, but no, not insulting the guys, but like 2 years ago, Nicholas with Sky, he at one stage was told, Nicholas, you're now on the front now from 80 to 120k, which means that whatever happens between those 2 limits, he has to make sure nothing goes without him. That particular day, the movie star team were riding for some reason or whatever, and Nicholas felt it's great, I can have a handy ride. So after 120k, Nicholas, how are you? Great. Okay, see you tomorrow. I feel good. No, tomorrow. Whereas Nicholas felt really, really bad about it, and I can understand it. But then the very next day, the team had a bad day, and Froome was challenged on Alpe d'Huez. And Nicholas was the only one to basically help him. So you can understand the strategy there, that if Nicholas had buried himself yesterday for nothing, he wouldn't have had the energy to be with Froome. So it's become so scientific now, that's where it's gone to. You ride there, and there, and there. And you save the energy. Froome really, really needed it. You got a job to do. But Sky has gone a little bit overboard on it. With they've gone very technical and very scientific on it. And it is killing a bit of the suspense in the races. But to answer your question, I think I would have had a good go at Froome, yeah. Mm-hmm. And although I could never been as light as him, but nevertheless, Froome is a great guy and a great ambassador for cycling. because he has had a lot of kind of shit thrown at him over the last couple of years because of what's been going on in cycling in general, but not himself. And he has stood up to it very, very well. He's answered politely and correctly the journalists rather than breaking their nose, which other riders would have broken the journalists' noses, you know. So he has been a great ambassador for cycling, and I think that this year he strives on people knocking him. People say, well, Quintana won the Tour this year because Froome isn't going well. That's fueling his energy, you know, fueling his motor. And but he'll be hard to beat this year again. But I think that if we could take some conclusions from last year's Tour, we saw a batch of young guys coming up. Pinot, Bardet, Barguil, Dumoulin, Yates, a load of young guys coming up 24, 25 years of age who are not worried about being second. They want to win. Whereas for years, riders were riding to be second on the podium behind Froome or behind Indurain or behind whatever. All of a sudden they have the ambition to win and they believe they can win. And for that reason, I think for the next 5-10 years, we're going to live some really, really good tours.
Good. That's good to hear. I think we're going to have time for one or two questions. Here's the first one.
How you doing? Hey, how you doing? In the later that year, in '87, when you were in the final kilometre of the World Championship race, myself and all my friends thought that you were going to lead out Kelly for a sprint finish. And I think a lot of the riders in the bunch thought that too. And when you broke and nobody followed you, I'd like to know, what was the plan between yourself and Kelly before the race, and how did all that change, or what happened? What was going through your head when you went and nobody followed you?
Well, the deal was, I'd won the Giro, I won the Tour, and Sean, unfortunately, he crashed out of the Tour. Hadn't had a great season. So the Worlds that year was supposed to be designed more or less for a rider like Sean that was an all-rounder with a good sprinter. So that was Sean's year to be world champion. That year or the following year, but that year was definitely the year that was suited for him. And I basically went down, I was very tired after winning my double, and I had no real ambition going down there other than to help Sean. Because everybody has said, oh, it's a dead flat circuit, wait and see, it's a sprinter's race, I'm only going to make up the numbers and to help Sean. And it was only after arriving down like 3 days before, we went around the circuit and I realised, well, gee, this is okay. A sprinter goes around once, but we're going around 22 times with 2 climbs every lap. And I was saying that most of these sprinters are going to be tired at the end of it all. So I could have a chance, which in a way was good for me because I spent the last few months just thinking about helping Sean and getting to the end of my season. I wasn't even thinking 1 second about the World Championships, and nobody was kind of targeting me as a favourite either because they reckoned that I'd done too much in the Giro and the Tour that I'd be wasted for the Worlds. Another aspect that helped me very much also was the fact that it had been 35 degrees the day before. I was totally wasted because of the fatigue of the Giro and the Tour. But the morning of the race, we opened the curtains and it's 8 degrees and lashing rain. It wasn't Malahide or Swords or Dundrum, but it was Villac, lashings of rain in September. It was amazing, amazingly cold. And straight away, something clicks and you say, well, somebody's telling me something here. And you see things as well, like everyone opens the curtains up the same way, and some will say, well, shit, it's raining. They're all of a sudden they're beaten. Some don't like the rain, some will fall off, some won't be on form, some won't, we all have our problems in the rain and the sun. Whereas your 200 kind of opponents, all of a sudden becomes down to, say, 50 and 20 direct rivals, So I thought, okay, well, the best thing to do is keep dry for the first part of the race as much as I can, hide, and then the second part of the race, then just try and be available to help Sean and wait and see. So 2 laps to go, then Sean had missed a break, and I'd done a lot of work before then, so I was a bit starting to feel that it was 272 kilometres, so I was starting to feel a bit under the weather while it was raining, and I accelerated a little bit, brought Sean off the front, we cut the group in front, and I went straight to the front to make sure the brake kind of got away. So once the brake was established then, I came back to the back, thinking, okay, well I better just kind of take a rest because if I'm going to lead Sean out for the sprint, I can't just lead out for 10k, I got to lead out the final 4 or 5. So as I got to the back then, 2 or 3 guys attacked. Nobody chased. So I thought, gee, I've been working all day for Sean, here these guys are riding away from us. So I jumped across to them, thinking that the group would come after me, but they didn't react straight away. So I found myself in this 4-man break, and of the 4 man, there was 5 of us with myself. The 4 of them are faster sprinters than myself. So I'm saying, like, what a bloody mess I've got myself into now, because I can't sprint with these guys. I've worked all day, we've built the whole thing up for Sean, we've ridden for Sean all day, and now Sean's back behind. So I tried getting away about 5k to go, but as I was going up the right hand side, the group pulled across and kind of stopped me a little bit. But then I kind of came into the final corner. I had one guy on my wheel, and like, it's amazing how the brain actually works. And not because of Google, but when I'm explaining what happens, I often say I Googled help, and it's actually faster than Google help, because it's amazing how the brain actually works. Like, you're going into a corner, left-hand corner, 500 meters to go, the wind's coming from the right, so you're analysing all this in your brain, and where can I go? I have one guy on my wheel. If I go to the right, because the guy's going to go to the left, so I'll be in the wind. If I go off on the right, the guy's going to come on my wheel, he's going to beat me. I don't want to be second. If I wait, I'm going to be 5th. What do I do? So all of a sudden, like, the brain keeps going, and the guys are pulling into the left-hand side to close the door. And I waited till that door got just enough for me to get through. So if the guy behind me tries to follow me, he might just hesitate a little bit. So I went through the gap, got through. That actually happened. The guys in the group were Sorensen, Van Vliet, and Ralph Goltz, all sprinters, but all afraid of each other. So I was going again, and these guys are going to look at each other, because if one leads out, one's going to get beaten. So I might gain a few seconds there. That's what happened. I went on the left-hand side. The guy behind me got blocked. The others started looking at each other. I got 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards. And that was enough then to hold them off to the finish. And then Sean, of course, then was in the group behind. They caught this small group about 20, 30 yards to go. And Sean, of course, finished 6th. So that was it was amazing kind of final. But like, I only won two one-day races in my career. One was the Roche Championships, and the other was a Paris-Roubaix Amateur. So I wasn't that kind of I was more of an endurance and a tour rider. But it's amazing how things just kind of click at the last minute, and it's amazing how fast the brain has to adapt to the different circumstances.
And of course, it wrapped up a fantastic a banner year, 1987. I think we're almost out of time. As I say, Stephen, it's wonderful to have you here at Google. And it's wonderful to have you as a Google customer. You have a thriving cycling business, which I believe we're helping you with. And it's going well. Yeah,
the cycling holidays now are going 21 years now. Kind of Stephen Roche Cycling Holidays.com. And it's we have almost 70% repeat loyalty clients, very loyal clients. And it's basically a program we have in Spain and Mallorca, where we have 5 groups every day for 5 different levels, so everybody here can find a level of their own. And we have 2 ride captains in each group, which actually make sure the speed is kept to a certain speed. We don't lose anybody behind. The following car to make sure we have drinks and everything else, as in water and electrolytes, not in alcoholic drink. And we have 3 lovely hotels which we keep our people in, and we have between 60 and 80 people a week for February through to June, and then September, October. And in between we do private guiding, bike rentals and everything else. And this year, of course, for the 30th anniversary, we're going back to that famous stage in La Plana, where we're organising in June. We're calling litap87.com, it's our own website. And we're having it a 3-day event where we arrive into Grenoble on the Friday night, June 9th. Saturday morning we do Grenoble, Bourgoison, up Alpe d'Huez, 70k only, but Alpe d'Huez. And the Dauphiné, which is the second biggest tour in France, will arrive 1 hour behind us. And Froome and the tour contenders will be there as well for the second last stage of the Dauphiné. Next day we start Bourgoison, which is where the stage 21 started. Bourgoison, over Lautrec, Galibier, Télégraphe, down into Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, where we have lunch. And then we have to the limit will be to Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, then you get a bus to the hotel. And over the limit, we'll leave Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne and go over to Madeleine down the far side, which is the second climb of the famous stage. Next morning we do Brie-de-Liban, back on the stage again, up into La Plagne, finishing on top of La Plagne to have completed the full stage.
Great.
So it's a fairly kind of monumental stage, but there's no time on it. We have following cars, motorbikes. There are only going to be about 30 people on it, 30, 35 people on it, fully guided motorbikes and ride captains, lovely hotels. And so we're looking forward to it, and hopefully we will have some names on it as well, where we haven't got full agreements yet from the likes of Indurain, Delgado. I'm trying to get Delgado to come back and relive the stage, and but this time not collapsing, and for the fun of it, like, so there'll be a few names will be coming along with us to either for the 3 days or for one of the days. Even Eddie Merckx we're talking to also, maybe he might come along and ride the last few kilometres with us. So we're doing that, and also we have a Lighthouse Tour at the end of the year, which is in Mallorca, which is 4 days around the island, every day changing hotels for 4 days, which is something we've done for the last 2 years now, and it's been a great success. So like, the cycling holidays are booming. There are many guys out there doing it. I was one of the first guys doing it 21 years ago. Now there's hundreds of them doing it now, but we're still there, and we like to kind of both ourselves as being one of the best.
Good. So there's a cycling holiday for everybody in the audience.
Everybody in the audience. StephenRoche.com.
If the price is right. Stephen, wonderful to have you here. Thank you very much, and good luck with your business and good luck with your commentating over the next 3 weeks for the Giro.
Thank you very much. Hope you all enjoyed it. We didn't give you much time to talk, did we? Unfortunately, get any questions in, you know. It's unfortunate, but
well, you're sticking around for a few minutes.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Happy to ask questions. All right.
Thank you. All right.